Europe has begun to fall. The globalist powers that have governed Europe since the end of the Second World War are beginning to crumble. We're going to take a deep dive into what's going on in Europe. We're going to see the massive sea of protests that are erupting throughout the continent. And make sure to stick with me at the very end of this video to find out what it all means for the emergence of a new political order. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, patriots all across the world. It's me, Dr. Steve, your patriot professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. If you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. And gang, we are just going to dive right in here. As I'm sure many of you know, Russia has finally done what was once thought unimaginable. Russia has officially turned off the gas supply to Europe. Now, remember, Russia's the #1 food, fuel, and fertilizer exporter in the world. And Europe, because of their green initiatives, it's their own fault. Europe has forsaken investing in its own energy reserves. It's forsaken drilling and the like, and instead remains radically reliant on gas and oil imports, of which Russia is one of the main suppliers. Europe gets 40% of its gas from Russia. President Trump warned European leaders big time about this. You probably remember that. He actually referred to Germany as Russia's captive after they formalized the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, or if you're Biden's press secretary, the Nordstrom pipeline.
So you've heard us say this, that what we see Russia's doing, and we've been very clear about this, is that they're using energy, they're weaponizing energy, and it's choosing to one of the things that has been out there, to shut down the pipeline of Nord Stream 1.
Yeah, that's right. According to Biden's press secretary, Nordstrom has graduated from department stores to now gas pipelines. Who would have guessed? Well done, Nordstrom. And it was very interesting because, you know, geopolitically speaking, Vladimir Putin originally appeared very hesitant to do this, to cut off Europe's fuel supply. If you recall, he delayed and he appeared to even backtrack on his threat to turn off the gas on Europe. He even got most European nations to capitulate on his demands that they pay for their gas in rubles. But now the Russian Federation has officially cut the gas off from Europe, leaving a massive 40% hole in their gas supply. Russia did confirm that this move is in response to Europe's attempt at imposing crippling sanctions on Russia, and until those sanctions are lifted, the gas will remain turned off. In fact, it's just been announced today that Russia has begun ditching the petrodollar. This is exactly what we predicted would happen months back. The petrodollar is history as the result of the absurd attempt by Western powers to weaponize the globalist financial system against Russia. Russia has just sealed a deal with China where gas supplies will be traded via rubles and the Chinese yuan, totally freezing out the petrodollar. And this is really gigantic, and it's yet another sign that the globalist world of Davos and DC and Brussels is collapsing. It's absolutely losing in real time the financial power it had just months ago. And nowhere do we see that system collapsing more than in Europe, in light of the massive energy price surges that are shocking the population across the continent. The people are starting to rise up. In the Czech Republic, upwards of 100,000 people took to the streets of Prague to demand an immediate end to the weapons supplies to Ukraine and sanctions against Russia. In fact, they chanted repeatedly, "This is not our war. This is not our war," as they demanded their leftist government there to abandon their ideological insanity over Ukraine that is currently crushing Europe's economy. In Germany, tens of thousands came out over the weekend to protest their far-left government's policies on energy prices and its hardline approach to Russian sanctions and green energy. In fact, the French economist and financier Charles Gave recently predicted that these uprisings in the Czech Republic and in Germany are going to spread like wildfire all over the continent. According to Gave, the demonstrations in Prague and in Germany are only the beginning, as the price of gas and then consequentially electricity continue to surge. It will drive European citizens utterly mad with anger against their political leaders who have trashed their economies, first in the name of COVID and now in the name of Kherson, as it were, right? They've had it with these technocrats whose management of their lives and their economies is so demonstrably incompetent and disastrous. And now people cumulatively by the hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, are beginning to fill European streets. And all this French financier has to do is look in his own backyard to see his predictions coming true, right? Being fulfilled. French citizens took to the streets over the weekend to denounce French President Emmanuel Macron and what they consider to be NATO's suicide mission against Russia, a suicide mission that's not only fighting to the very last Ukrainian, but is crippling Europeans economically in ways not seen in over 50 years. Now, keep in mind, these protests come on the heels of Macron's humiliating defeat at the polls a few months back when he became the first French president to lose his parliamentary majority right after his own re-election in over 20 years. The Patriot Party, called National Rally, led by Marine Le Pen, they absolutely surged to take that parliamentary majority away from Macron, again, largely because of how upset the French were at Macron's policies toward Russia that were crushing France's economy. But at least Macron is still in power. In the UK, Boris Johnson, who is perhaps the biggest anti-Russian hawk in Europe, his administration imploded under the weight of the sanctions, at least in part. He killed himself in many other ways as well. In Italy, the Draghi government collapsed, and now Italy is poised to elect the single most populist right government in all of Western Europe. In the Netherlands and in Belgium, farmers are rising up all over their respective nations to push back against their liberal government's insane mandates, demanding they cut 30% of their agricultural production and the like. And over all of this is the totally incompetent shadow of a U.S. president who doesn't even know his own name half the time. So clearly what we're seeing, or at least it's clear to me, that is, we're seeing the fall of globalist Europe. We're seeing the fall of Europe inordinately governed by the ilk at Davos and the bullies in Brussels, whose perceived incompetence level literally grows every single day at the gas pumps, with the latest skyrocketing energy bills, with food prices inflating like never before. The technocratic governments of Europe are about to fall. Now, what replaces them in the short term, we're going to have to see. But a number of pundits are keeping a very, very close eye on what's happening in Italy. The rise of the Patriot parties like the Brothers of Italy and Lega, or the League, the extraordinary surge in popularity of the nationalist populist right throughout the nation, it's not just happening in Italy. It's happening in France, it's happening in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in Spain. A new Europe appears to be rising. The question seems to be no longer if, but when, and how much damage will the globalist status quo inflict until then. As always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button, and you will definitely want to check out my latest video on Biden getting mercilessly heckled during his Labor Day speech and the significance around it. I think you're going to find it very fascinating. So make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.